Off a little bit of history. 2018, together, a journey of a statewide public education strategic plan determined to elevate the academic achievement of all students. We started by examining some of the systemic issues to determine changes needed to eliminate barriers to success for each and every student that we served. The theme for this planning and work session highlights the importance of learning from all aspects of our past, build a better future for all of the students we serve. Sometimes discussing the past can be difficult, but our students benefit when we maintain the courage to engage in the needed reflection, honest conversations, most importantly, the actions, to address the persistent social, economic, and other issues. I'm reminded of a sidewalk mural. I'll ask Deanna to show this, that I discovered one morning when I was out on a run, that no doubt was written by one of our students. And I think what he or she said is so applicable today. We can do the hard things. It takes all of us working together to achieve these common goals for the essential public good of public education. So since 2018, we have and will continue to remain steadfast to upholding our guiding principles, focused on education equity for all students and educating the whole child and every student. And what we've learned, especially during the COVID experience, is that these guiding principles are central to providing quality opportunity and access for our students. At the heart of our strategy is to fulfill our constitutional responsibilities to all students and how we best use the resources that our fellow citizens have entrusted to us. These resources take many forms, such as human capital, financial, time, talent, energy, maybe most importantly, our shared commitments. In 2019, as part of the State Public Education Strategic Plan, we defined equity as the belief and practice of ensuring that every student is treated in a fair and just manner, providing the necessary allocation of resources for their success, and eliminating barriers to full participation and opportunities. Similarly, the recently developed comprehensive remedial plan submitted to the court requires that we provide the necessary resources to fulfill our duties to provide the opportunity to every student to obtain a sound basic education. So while the vision has been set, we do not do this work alone. This necessary work requires partnership and collaboration among ourselves and from many different partners and stakeholders. What we do know is that working together with a shared vision for our students' success and striving for shared objectives exponentially increases the impact and results across our state. So over the next 2 days, while we have time together to learn and build our collective leadership capacity, with sessions centered on resource allocation and whole child supports. And it's my hope that we leave this meeting, this planning and work session, re-energized and inspired to continue to do the work, even through challenge, sometimes opposition. This time, I'm delighted to turn to two of my colleagues who were instrumental in leading this effort, the chair and vice chair of our strategic planning committee, Mr. James Ford and Ms. Jill Kamnitz. Mr. Ford. Chair, to everyone.
Never wanted to begin any session without first recalling the previous day's lessons so that we knew where we had been before we forecast where we are going. With that in mind, in true history teacher fashion, I want to dial the clock back just a little bit and take us back to 2019, where we began a lot of this strategic planning process. And recall that our strategic plan and its 3 goals, first goal being eliminating opportunity gaps, the second goal improving school and district performance, and the third goal, increasing educator preparedness, all surrounded and guided by the guiding principles of equity and whole child. We have been all over the place, but we have a trajectory. We have been visited by the immortal Jim Johnson, who talked about the demographic shifts. We've even talked about dashboards and data. We've had conversations about budgets and how to use budgets and the role of the State Board of Education within the state and the mental models around such things. We've even had conversations about the teacher pipeline and diversifying that. What I want to submit today is that we have done a great job in centering discussions around equity and whole child. But today begins the moment where we begin to build bridges from theory to practice, which is often the most difficult part of any pursuit, is taking something out of the realm of the idea and actuating it and making it concrete. You're also going to notice a particular flavor that focuses on the whole child, because the social and emotional needs, the neurological parts that take place in the learning process are often neglected and ignored. And I think we can see in the midst of a global pandemic and the reverberations that have happened, not just for students, but also for adults, the need for us as leaders across the state to begin to focus on that and make that central to how we function. And so this is our North Star. This is our Yellow Brick Road. And I hope that ultimately over the course of these next couple of days, that we leave our state and our students, as well as our teachers and education stakeholders, in a better position than prior to. So with that, I look forward to it, and I hand it over to my vice chair, Ms. Jill Cammons.
May be a little repetitious, but I promise you the three of us did not collaborate on this. Did I? Thank you. 3 years ago, almost to the day, many of us gathered at North Carolina Central University for a full day of work with the Racial Equity Institute, which broadened our understanding of our society and the forces within it that cause racial inequity. Me and Mr. Ford, it was our second meeting on the Board of Education. Less than a week after that meeting, the board committed to the concepts of equity and the whole child and to a new strategic plan to guide our work. We have had innumerable issue sessions, both within our regular meeting structures and through excellent planning and work sessions that have deepened our understanding, informed our decisions, and strengthened our partnerships, particularly with the amazing leadership and staff at the Department of Public Instruction who move us toward our goals through their work. This week, we continue our progress toward the promise of a sound basic education for each and every student by exploring opportunities for change in a variety of the systems that comprise public education in North Carolina. I'm looking forward to another stimulating session that will give us new energy and ideas as we continue this journey together. Cheers.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ford and Ms. Kamnitz, for those remarks and your leadership in this effort. I now turn to Dr. Townsend Smith and Ms. Altieri to provide us an overview and expected results for the items in this planning and work session. Dr. Townsend Smith.
Oh, good morning, good morning, good morning. Good to see your faces here today. We put a lot of heart into this work, and we all know that the equity work and the whole child work, at the center of that is heart. And so today, we open with our planning and work session grounded in this theme of NCB the change, bridges to eliminating opportunity gaps, a progress and a promise toward a sound basic education. A little later in our programming today, we will honor Dr. Robert E. Bridges, who set the path for us early on. And I think it's a great way for us to launch our planning and work session. We're going to hear from none other than Dr. Mike Ward, former superintendent, Dr. Olivia Oxendine, and Dr. Bridges' son, Dr. Randy Bridges. So we look forward to that in a little bit. We have a full slate before you today. We're going to keep you busy and engaged, but we're also going to feed you well and make sure that you are saturated throughout this entire presentation. So you have an agenda before you on the table. There's a glossy agenda so that you have descriptions of the sessions, which are also online. This is the day 2. And then on day 3, we have a closing keynote at the top of the meeting. But what we want to talk about here a little bit right now is the core outcomes and expected results for this session. We are going to talk about strategies we're going to talk about strategies to continue to close opportunity gaps to achieve a sound basic education, much to the points that have been raised by Chair Davis, Mr. Ford, and Ms. Kamnitz. We're going to understand the importance of centering equity and centering equity when it comes to allocating resources. We're going to dig a little deeper and examine systems and models to support educators, students in their mental and social and emotional needs, and how to implement whole child supports and resources. And then the last core outcome and expected result for this session is to start to think about, because we have a short session coming up, et cetera, how do we start to apply some of what we are learning today as we develop our legislative agenda? No, we're not going to do that in this meeting, but just to plant those seeds for you here today. There is evaluation. There's a QR code for day 1 on the table. So at any point that you have to leave the session and not return, make sure that you provide us with feedback so that we can continue to improve and get better. And there'll be a separate QR code for tomorrow. And before I turn it over to Ms. Altieri, just so that you know, the guest Wi-Fi is the NCDPI guest. The username for that is on each of the poles in the room. The restrooms are out the door to my right, so that you know where to go. And following Ms. Altieri, I will close us out this morning and get our day started. On your programs, on the agenda that's posted online, we always like to center our vision and mission, which is grounded in equity and whole child. Placing a reminder, as Mr. Ford stated, there are 3 goals that we are aiming toward by 2025. We want to eliminate opportunity gaps, improve school and district performance, increase educator preparedness, and meet the needs of every student by 2025. This is one of the first times that I've felt that every session that we have coming before you during this planning and work session hits at every single one of those goals. Every single presentation does that. And so we are happy about that, about accomplishing that goal for the first time in one of these planning and work sessions. And just remember that all of your goals, everything that we will do today is grounded in equity and whole child, all of which have been adopted and are a part of your approved strategic plan.
I am really excited today to share this good news. The NC Strategic Dashboard Monitoring Tool went live on October 15th. It's aligned to the strategic plan goals and priorities and allows data to be viewed at the state, district, and school level. And it also allows the additional ability to run a custom comparison so that data can be disaggregated based on things such as student demographics or CSI, TSI status of schools. It allows education stakeholders the ability to access data to inform future progress. Our hope is that this is formative, not used in a punitive way, but to truly inform efforts moving forward. The board approved the phase 2 development of the dashboard, which expands this dashboard to include other metrics aligned to the strategic plan and also incorporates feedback from the strategic planning committee and other ed stakeholders. I wanted to put this part of the presentation in here to remind everyone of our core competencies. They are centered around equity, their human capital, opportunity and access, school performance, and resource allocation, and they feed the efforts and the priorities of the board and the agency. Also, in this current slide is a reminder of our equity framework and core equity questions to consider during decision-making and in discussions.
So as we close out today, we have a full plate of presenters and skilled presenters that will come before you over the next 3 days. And as I close us out here today, I just want to reiterate what I opened with, that this work is a work of heart. I say this because equity and whole child work requires heart and dedication. As the chair so eloquently stated, we must continue to have the courage to lead in the face of opposition. Why? Because like someone that I truly admire, Dr. Flood, said in a presentation recently, we do not do this work for ourselves, but for those who cannot. And those are our public school children who are depending on us to make policy recommendations and decisions to provide the needed opportunity and access. Central to opportunity and access, and you hear me say this all the time, is allocation of resources. Equity requires resource allocation, and that is a part of the work that we have not truly focused on a lot, but as Mr. Ford said, today we're going to flex that muscle a little bit and learn and engage in learning. And we have a tremendous opportunity to continue to dismantle systems and barriers to success by prioritizing needs of each and every student we have the privilege to serve. The comprehensive remedial plan provided to the courts is the most comprehensive plan ever submitted. Those were the judge's words. Last year, we heard that our strategic plan that is approved by this board is a national model. Why is that? I say it's because we are adhering to and maintaining the guiding principles of equity and whole child. And as I reflect on the legacy of this work we have started, I am humbled to be a part of the mission to provide a sound basic education. But doing so requires dedication to each and every student. It requires quality opportunity and access through appropriate resource allocation, commitment to the universal common good of public education, intentionality, partnership, and commitment, taking care of ourselves so that we can continue to take care of those we serve. And most importantly, it requires you. We must do the constant personal work, examining ourselves, our beliefs, to move the collective work forward to meet the needs of each and every student. And with that, that wraps out our outcomes and expectations part of this presentation today. Thank you so much for allowing us to serve, and we'll turn it back over to you, Chair.
Any questions for Dr. Townsend Smith and Ms. Altieri on our agenda? Right, seeing none, we'll jump in. So, as our history teacher mentioned, it's always appropriate to take a step back and reflect on where we've been as we build momentum for where we're going. And in this meeting, we have the distinct honor to celebrate one of North Carolina's true education heroes. In 2001, under the direction of former State Superintendent Dr. Mike Ward, Closing the Achievement Gap Commission was formed and developed recommendations for this board's consideration. Our own Dr. Olivia Oxendine was a member of that commission. And the report is posted with our board materials, and each of us will receive a copy of that document, which is affectionately referenced as the Bridges Report. Now we have an opportunity to hear first from Dr. Ward and then from Dr. Oxendine, who will introduce our honored guest. So we'll turn to Dr. Ward.
Good morning, board members, Superintendent Truitt, the family of Dr. Bridges, colleagues, and friends. I regret that I can't be there today, but I'm grateful that I get to share a few thoughts. I want to share a few slides. It's a good thing to pause and pay tribute to Dr. Robert Bridges. He was a man of stature, physically, professionally, and morally. He was a giant in our midst. During my tenure as state superintendent, we created the Commission on Raising Achievement and Closing Gaps. We asked former Wake County School Superintendent Bob Bridges to take on the role of chair, and to our great joy, he said yes. We were building on some momentum at the time. North Carolina education, thanks to educators, parents, and communities, was getting better faster than was the case in pretty much any other state in the country. And gaps by race and poverty were starting to narrow. North Carolina received the Daisy Bates Education Award at the NAACP's 4th National Education Summit in 2001. The News and Observer ran this op-ed in January of 2000. But in spite of all these signs of progress, it was very clear that the system was not working well for all students. We needed to accelerate the progress, and we needed for all children to fare well. The Commission on Raising Achievement and Closing Gaps set about generating strategies that would help make it so. With Dr. Bridges' guidance, some of North Carolina's best leaders were tapped as members of the commission, and that includes your own Dr. Olivia Oxendine. The cover of the commission's inaugural report in January of 2001 makes clear that the goal was straightforward: an educational system in which the achievement of all students would accelerate, and a system in which those faring least well in the system would realize the most rapid achievement gains. This was first and foremost a matter of justice. It was also a matter of strengthening community, and it was a matter of economic imperative. Simply put, Bob Bridges and the commission acted on the belief that we can't become who we aspire to be as a community, as a state, as a nation, if we don't accelerate achievement and close gaps. Thanks to Bob Bridges' insight and leadership, the commission's recommendations remain relevant. But new strategies are needed as well, and the time to realize the vision of a system in which all students fare well, regardless of race, poverty, disability, English language status, is overdue. Thank you to the state board and to the state superintendent for making this a priority. And thank you for taking time to honor one of North Carolina's heroes, Dr. Bob Bridges. I join you in this salute to him and to his incredible family. Thank you.
Hear me, okay, very good. I can do it. I really do. I've prepared and I've practiced and rehearsed. So Olivia, let's get this together. I mean, the opening comments and the message from Mike Ward just really brought this all home to me in the last, I would say, 3 minutes. So I'm going to barrel right in and be strong and deliver my very condensed memories of my opportunity to serve on this commission. And I will say to you, if you've ever served on a commission, and most of you have, a task force, a commission, an important council, do not get in the presence of Deanna Townsend Smith and tell her about it. Because she will give you a 20-year exam. And that's basically what I'm about to do. It's like an exam for me, but it's one of the pleasant exams, if there can be one. I told my students at Pembroke a couple of weeks ago that I was going to be sharing some memories about having served on the Closing Achievement Gap Commission. And I said to them, I assign my students artifacts all the time. I said to them, but I never dreamt that I would be an artifact. So in a way, I'm an artifact today. But let me talk about some highlights of that time. When I think about Robert Bridges, what comes to mind is a man who was both timeless and timely. And he came to the leadership position of the commission from a vein of being timely. He entered his profession about 1961 as a classroom teacher. So he was somewhere between the civil rights movement, the Martin Luther King marches and protests, and after the period of the desegregation of the University of Alabama, the University of Ole Miss, and the University of Arkansas. So he brought to us a timeliness to the role of chair of the commission. The timelessness is the fact that here we are today discussing the commission and discussing the leadership he brought to the commission. When he spoke to us, when we raised our hands to ask a question or make a comment, you knew that he was going to respond with very powerful insight, that he was going to say something to us to guide us in a way that we either needed to listen intently or take down a note or do all of the above. So it was truly an honor for me to have been selected and asked to serve on the commission. How did I get on the commission? At the time, I was serving as the writing consultant with the Sandhills Region Education Consortium. That was at that time located in Carthage, North Carolina. So working in that region, I was in the epicenter of low achievement among American Indian students. So that is one of the reasons I brought the voice of already a seasoned educator, but also very knowledgeable about the factors underlying the low performance of American Indian students in Region 4, largely in the Robeson County, the Hoke County, and the Scotland County, and the Cumberland County areas. Serving with me, I also had the privilege of serving alongside of me, Mitch Tyler. Some of you remember Mitch Tyler. Some of you who have been in the agency for a while, you probably remember Mitch Tyler. I know my colleagues from the public schools of Robeson County who are with us today do remember Mitch Tyler. He was a young superintendent with the Hoke County Schools, but prior to assuming that position, he was a special assistant to Dr. Ward. Now, right above my head, right above this ceiling, on the mezzanine, you will find a plaque honoring Mitch Tyler, and it's facing North Wilmington Street. So if you're ever on the mezzanine, and I'm sure you are probably each day, take a look at the plaque because it's beside the office where Mitch Tyler, where he occupied that office. He passed away. He had a sudden heart attack. Perhaps the second year he was the superintendent in Hoke County. He had a sudden heart attack with his son on a Saturday morning hunting. So he was another stalwart, young but stalwart, and a strong voice for the equality and equity of Native American students and all students for that matter. I want to I'm not going to take up much time, but there are a few points in the report that I would like to draw your attention to. You have a copy of the report in front of you, and I would urge you to take some time to read it because some of the concepts and some of the recommendations, there are 11 of them, we are touching on those recommendations in all the work we do today, which gives me great pride. But if you take a look at the cover of that report, we have a ways to go. You see the vision. The vision is actually on the cover of the report, and you see the trajectory. We haven't quite gotten there, but can we? We certainly can. Let me highlight a couple of things. From the report, statewide data clearly established that minority students are seriously over-identified and placed in special programs for the mentally and behaviorally handicapped. We have and are addressing that. It can also be observed and documented that Black, Indian, and Hispanic students are underrepresented in gifted and advanced placement classes around the state. We're addressing that. We're addressing it through the partnership with AP and the work of Dr. Shaw Coltrane. And she brings the reports to us very excitedly every month. So we're addressing that. Homeschool relations. This is an area that we haven't, perhaps we have tapped it, but maybe not to the extent that it appears in the report. Homeschool relations. Schools that have made substantial progress in closing the achievement gap have been successful at closing the communication and the interaction gaps between home and school. So one of the recommendations in the report suggests that school districts develop an aggressive campaign to involve families and homes, parents and communities in the work of closing the achievement gap. That's probably something, perhaps it has been done. I'm not aware of it, but it is certainly something that we could consider. In the area of law and policy, a couple of points that I want to point out in the report, law and policy. Data disaggregation doesn't go far enough. While the tool identifies gaps, SBE policy fails to identify specific standards for closing the achievement gap. So a recommendation was that school districts report what is happening in the districts to close the gap. But in addition to that, what are the standards that are being implemented to make sure that happens? The ABC model best shows whether growth expectations have been met. It is not designed to set a standard for closing the gap or measure progress toward ending the gap. Put another way, requiring growth of all students is positive and essential, but it does not meet the Commission's belief that more accelerated growth is necessary in order to close the gap. That is very, very important. That tells me a lot, and it really points us in an important direction when we think about our data and think about ways to close the gap and bring about equity and opportunity for our students. Throughout the report, there are kind of vignettes about some of the work of Ron Edmonds, and we have talked about that several times in our board meetings. I want to close my presentation, my reflection, my memories of having had the opportunity to serve on the commission by quoting directly from Ron Edmonds. And it really, really goes to the heart of how causing us to soul search and ask, what else can we do? And it goes this way. We can, whenever and wherever we choose, successfully teach all children whose schooling is of interest to us. We already know more than we need to do this. Whether we do it or not must finally depend on how we feel about the fact that we have not done so far. So again, thank you, Deanna, for giving me this opportunity. And at this time, I'm going to introduce Randy Bridges.
Actually, we're going to call an audible and make a slight change to our agenda, and we'll come back and honor Mr. Bridges. But so we've been advised by law enforcement that it's best for us to evacuate the building at this time, and the fire alarm will go off. So if you can exit the building in the back and go to the north end of Halifax Mall, north end.